Hi there, this is Eric Tippelt from DIY Wealth Education. This is our presentation on the TFSA and the RRSP. It's beginning of February here in Canada and around the world, but in Canada our banks and financial institutions have a habit of calling this RRSP season. And I think people should know what the difference is between an RRSP and a TFSA. So that's what this presentation is really all about. That's a picture of me and my buddy, Mr. Kevin O'Leary. You might have heard of him. One of the questions I have to ask is, how many of you out there actually have an RRSP account? How many have more than one? What are you going to use the money for? If you're an American and you're watching this, when you hear the word RRSP, simply replace it with 401k. Canadians, I think, stole the RRSP from your 401k, so they parallel them each other quite well. The Registered Retirement Savings Plan in Canada has been around for quite a while. It came about in 1957, and it was set up by the federal government because they were afraid that Canadians were not saving enough money to pay for their retirement, and that the Canada Pension Plan might not be able to keep up with the fewer babies that were being born and the more people that were going to be retiring. This was probably the largest and only tax break most employees and self-employed Canadians had up until the introduction of the TFSA. There are limits on how much you can contribute. It's usually the lower of 18% of last year's earnings. For the current tax year of 2022, that's $29,210. That's the maximum you can contribute. There are penalties if you contribute more. A lot of companies have no longer got a pension plan. So what they have done in order to save themselves a whole ton of money is they've come out to their employees and basically said, we will match contributions, or we will add money if you put money into an RRSP. And this is if the company is offering it, it is a really good thing for you to get involved in, and you probably should do it, especially if they're willing to match you $1 for dollar. So if you put in $100, they put in $100. That's great. You just made a 100% return on your investment. Now, with the RRSP, the big benefit of it is the so-called money you get back at tax time. That's only if you have paid in the right amount of income tax through the rest of the year. Because then with the money you put into your RRSP goes against your income, and you might get some your tax back. If the company is contributing, that their portion does not apply to that. It is only the money that you contribute. The RRSP is really nothing more than an account. It's basically a file folder, and it holds a bunch of stuff. It can hold an ETF, it can hold a GIC, a savings account, mutual funds, stocks, bonds. You can even put gold and silver into your RRSP. So really it is just a file folder that has a bunch of rules applied to it. Oops, went too fast. As you can see from this, Jane is using this for a savings account. She has some stocks in Kawartha Credit Union, Interdynamic Company, True North Retirement or Registered Income Plan. She has some mutual funds, and she has a GIC. So these are just some of the things that you can put into your mutual fund folder. Mutual funds are usually made up in two types. There is the self-directed and the professionally managed. If you're going to a bank or a mutual fund company to work with your advisor to get an RRSP, that is a professionally managed account. But you can also set up an RRSP on, say, an online trading account, and you can actually do all of your own investing from there. as it says, there are literally dozens of firms out there, mutual fund companies, banks, credit unions, just about anybody. Just be really careful who you deal with. Always deal with a reputable company. As you can see, there's Bernie Madoff on there. For those of you that are old enough to remember who he is, he's credited with having one of the largest Ponzi schemes in the world, and he defrauded all kinds of investors from their money. So be really careful who you use. In Canada, use a reputable firm, use one of the banks, use Investors Group, some AGF funds, those kind of places. Joe's Mutual Funds might not be the best place for you to invest. When it's self-directed, you can set up your own RRSP account. I have several, and I decide what goes in them. I buy and sell out of them, and I do basically everything that a professionally managed fund will do. And that's a pretty easy thing to do. If you go into your local financial institution, it's easiest to be done at a financial institution. It's not that easy if you're going to some place like AGF or Investors Group or one of those places. They want to do it for you. So you can do it, but most of the time you'll either do this at a bank or at a credit union. So how does the RRSP really work? It's a pretty simple system. Ted gets his paycheck, so the government or the employer on behalf of the government has already deducted his income tax from his paycheck. So from his paycheck, Ted contributes $150 into his RRSP account. Sometime at the end of the year, usually around the end of February, actually beginning of the next tax year, you'll get a form from the government or from your employer that will tell you how much money you contributed to your RRSP. On your tax form, you simply put that contribution in, and basically whatever your tax rate is, as long as you have paid enough income tax in the first place, if you have paid enough and you put in your RRSP account, whatever tax rate you are getting for your income tax, you would get that amount of money back. In our example here, Ted's getting a tax refund of $45. Not anything to get excited about, but that's the way it works. So that has always been the attraction of the RRSP. It is also not they're not telling you 100% of the truth, because part of what they do to sell you the RRSP is they tell you that, well, in retirement your tax rate will not be as high as it was when you were working. I think you'll find there's an awful lot of people in Canada who, when they turned 65 or 70 and started taking money out of their RRSP, uttered the words, "I've never paid so much darn tax in all my life," because it really depends on what kind of income is coming out of your RRSP. Your tax rate is as on earned income, which is what you get if you're getting a paycheck, is usually not that high. Different types of income get taxed at different rates. So if you're getting something that is basically giving you interest only, that's what your RRSP is earning, you could pay a tax rate as high as 50%, which if you're an ordinary working stiff is probably a heck of a lot more than you ever paid before. So one of the things you should do before you get ready to take money out is go talk to your tax accountant, because there are different ways to affect the amount of money that you get when you start taking money out of your RRSP. And again, depending on your age, if you're a young person, say 30 and under, when you put money into your RRSP and your investments, the younger you are, the bigger the number of aggressive investments you should have. You have the luxury of time, so that if there's a reset on the stock market or something like that, you have time to overcome it. so that you want to take advantage of getting the biggest return that you can. So when you're talking to your advisor or when you're doing your own work, you're looking for an investment that is giving you the highest return that you can possibly get. And the older you get, the more of that should shift to safer investments. Maybe not as many stocks, maybe get into bonds or GICs and that sort of thing. Things that are a little bit safer, so that you're protecting your money because you don't have the time anymore to overcome any setbacks. As you approach retirement, the investments in your RRSP need to change. As we've said, we're going to change to more safe investments rather than the more aggressive ones. Just remember that when you start taking money out of your RRSP, they will withhold tax money because all the money you take out of your RRSP is subject to income tax. So that's what they do. Your employer takes off your income tax from your paycheck right now, and the financial institution that has your RRSP, when you start taking money out of it, will do the same thing. So don't expect to take $1,000 a month out. It'll probably be closer to $650 that you will be getting out, even though you are taking $1,000 out of the principal of your RRSP. And again, as we said before, different types of income have different rates of tax. So please consult your tax accountant before you start taking it out to make sure you get the best advantage. As we said, as you get older, your safe investments need to go up and your aggressive investments need to go down. A lot of people say it's got to do with your age. If you're 60 years old, 60% should be in safe. I think if you're 60 years old, 80% should be safe and 20% should be aggressive. You still want to be getting as much as you can, but you want to protect what you've got as you get older. Just to prove the point, as you can see, if you're looking at interest and dividends, you can see that there's a great big difference between the tax rates, and you can see that eligible Canadian dividends are treated very nicely compared to ordinary interest and ordinary income. So that's why I tell you to go to a tax accountant, and any kind of investment that issues a dividend would definitely be considered a safe investment. So when it comes time to take money out, you will have they will deduct income tax right away before you get it. So even if you're taking out $1,000, don't expect to get $1,000. So you will be paying tax on it. The RRSP is a tax deferred account. So any of the money that you make will be taxed when you take it out. At age 72, you have to convert your RRSP to a RIF, or a Registered Retirement Income Fund. Basically what they do is they take the value of your RRSP, divide it by 20 years, so 240 months, and that's how much they would like you to take out every month. And yes, you do have to take it out. You do not have a choice. I think this is not a good thing, but that's the way the rules are set up for your RRSP. The only real use of the RRSP is as a single stream of income when you retire. That means you better have a hell of a lot of money in there if you are going to depend on it for your money and your retirement. If you want to go for a cruise or golf memberships, that sort of thing, there better be enough money in your account to take it out. Because remember, as you take it out, your principal goes down. So even if you're getting 6% or 10% returned, if it's going down, you're getting 6 or 10% of a lesser amount every month. So you can see that there is a bit. Now, as you get enough money in there that your 6% covers what you want to take out every month, different story. let's have a look at how much you need to do that. So my buddy retired Ted here has $500 a month in car payments. Food is $500, $250 for hydro, $500 for travel, that sort of thing. Basically, he needs $2,200 a month. So he's taken out of his, he takes $3,300 out of his RRSP every month. He loses 33% to income tax, and that gives him his $2,200 a month. Okay, so basically Ted is taking out $39,600 a year out of his RRSP. So if Ted is going to live for another 20 years and take that same amount, Ted needs to have $792,000 in his RRSP. How do we get $792 into the RRSP? We're using a 6% because that is a decent rate, and depending on what year you were, right now 6% is kind of tough to find, but it is out there. If that's what you have to accumulate, you're going to have to put $558 a month away for 35 years in your RRSP. So $6,700 a year you're going to have to put away for 35 years so that you can live off your RRSP in retirement. Sounds scary, doesn't it? That's a pretty big amount of money, and I don't know about you, but taking $6,700 a year or even $558 a month out of my budget is a lot of money. Really going to affect your lifestyle. If you're going to use your RRSP for something other than retirement, I found this out when I wanted to take money out to buy an income property. The problem with that is they are going to deduct income tax right away. They usually hold back about 10% for 5,000 and less, and if you take out more than 10,000, they withhold 30%. So be prepared that if you're going to take money out of your RRSP, and the other thing that you have to remember is that if you take money out of your RRSP, you will have to claim that as income. So yes, they withheld some tax and sent it to the government, but you're going to have to include the amount you took out on your income tax return. Okay, so it's definitely not free money. It is yours, but you got to give back pretty well what the government gave you when they gave you the tax break over those 35 years. The other use for the RRSP that they tell you about is using it for the down payment on your house. You can do that in Canada. Not something that I would recommend. There are some rules that go along with this that a lot of people will find come back to haunt them if they've done this. You need to be a Canadian resident. The property you're buying also applies to if you're having a new house built for you. You have to have that as your principal residence by October the 1st, the year after your RRSP withdrawal. You have to be a first-time home buyer. That's sort of a questionable thing. If you have not bought a house in I think it's about 10 or 12 years, you can actually still be considered a first-time home buyer. If your spouse has bought a house and it was in their name, and now you're buying a house that's also going to be in your name, you are also considered a first-time home buyer. Now, the big thing here is you need to repay everything you withdrew from your RRSP within 15 years. Okay, so that means whatever you took out, divide it by 15, that's how much you got to pay back every year. So that's about 1/15 of what you withdrew. If you don't put it back, you will have to declare that as income and pay income tax on it. Okay, so be really aware that this pulling money out of your RRSP for your down payment on your house sounds really cool and sounds like a really good idea until it comes time to pay it back. And again, the long term is what we have to look at. So basically a reality check, if you access the full $35,000 you're allowed to pull out, you would need to pay back $2,333 a year for 15 years. That's about $200 a month. So on top of all the expenses that come with owning a home, if you were living in an apartment, you're going to have a lot more expenses living in a house, and one of those expenses is going to be $200 a month to put back into your RRSP. And if not, you will have to claim an extra $2,333 a year on your income tax. So the RRSP sounds like a really good deal, but there's a lot of gotchas and catches. It's sort of like running your hand down a piece of sandpaper. Sounds like a good idea. It smooths things out, but you lose a lot of skin on the way down. So be real careful about how you're using your RRSP. It was designed to provide you with taxable income when you retire. Really was not designed for a first-time home buyer, but for a while, since that was the only account that Canadians had to deal with, that's why they allow you to use it for your down payment on a house. So basically, after-tax dollars that you get from your paycheck go into your RRSP. You might get a small tax refund. When you retire, you're going to pay taxes on every withdrawal that you take out back to the government, so some of the money that you get out will be yours. And there it is. If you're withdrawing less than $5,000, they're going to withhold 10%, and if you're over $5,000, they're going to withhold 30%. Again, there are situations that are different, but on the whole, that's the way it works. So your RRSP is a good idea if your employer has no pension plan and is only using your contribution and is matching your contribution. That's a really great way because you're making 100% investment. The tax refund that you get sounds like a really good thing because I can buy a television or maybe make an extra loan payment or something like that. But in the end, all the money that comes out of your RRSP will be taxed at the rate at which that money is made. So be real careful on that one. Okay? A little while ago, Canada brought out a new account called a TFSA, or a tax-free savings account. You can have more than one, just like an RRSP. You can have an RRSP in 5 different banks, and another one with Investors Group, and another one with AGF, and however many places you want to. So again, you can do the same thing with the TFSA. So you can have a TFSA with your local bank, with your local credit union. You can have your own, say an online trading account. All of that, it doesn't matter. You can have more than one. And again, here's where there's a big difference about how you're gonna use the money in your TFSA and how the government treats it. Now, I really think the name of this account is horrible. The name tax-free savings account, the banks and the government have done a horrible job of educating people as to what this account is, and I firmly believe that that is on purpose because the government hates this account. Alrighty, it really should be called a tax-free investing account, because if you're just using it like a savings account where all you're doing is putting money in and it's basically a savings account, you're getting about 0.25% interest. You are losing money every time you turn around because inflation, especially right now, is running at about 5 to 7%. So that means everything you buy is costing you 5 to 7% more, and you're only getting about 0.25% on your savings in your TFSA. Matter of fact, my online trading account used to pay me 2%, and now they're not paying me anything. So don't use it as a savings account. It really needs to have money-making investments in it. Okay? Americans should take a look at the Roth IRA. I thought the Canadian government was pretty smart bringing in the tax-free savings account until I read about the Roth IRA, and we basically just copied that. So you do have the same benefit. I'll be honest with you, I lived in the States for 3 years. I never heard the word Roth IRA ever mentioned. So you might want to ask about it. The major difference between the TFSA and the RRSP is that withdrawals from the TFSA do not cause any tax consequences whatsoever. It's your money, you take it out, you can use it for whatever the hell you want. You don't have to claim it on your income tax. It's it's your money. You're basically using money that's already had income tax taken off of it. Okay? Now, what seems like not a nice thing is that when you put money into your TFSA, you cannot get any kind of a tax refund. The other thing is the way it is set up. This is only person that can contribute is you. Your employer can only contribute to an RRSP, not a TFSA, because I told you the government hates this account because the last two words are the whole name, tax-free savings account. They don't want you putting any more money into this than they absolutely have to, because all they do is lose money every time you do that. So that's why this is, in my opinion, the greatest gift Canadians have ever been given. And the Americans, my American friends, please look at the Roth IRA, because it works very similar, and it is a great way to start making yourself more money that you're not going to have to pay income tax on. Very much the same as an RRSP, it's a file folder. Okay, it's nothing more than an account that has rules that go with it. So it's not a savings account as such, it's a file folder. Basically, Jane, taxpayer Jane, can put exactly the same things into her TFSA that she had in her RRSP. She can put in a savings account, she can hold stocks, bonds, GICs, monthly income stocks, anything she wants. Matter of fact, you can also hold actual gold and silver in your TFSA. Okay. Again, any of the money that you make in the TFSA, you keep. Okay. And again, they'll come in two flavors. Now, the nice thing is, the real big advantage of this is anytime you take money, you never have to worry about paying tax. And I'll go over a little later where there are some real benefits, especially for younger people, in doing this. Again, you can go self-directed or institutionally managed. Banks love to have your money. I do another course. I'll teach you how the banks use your money, and you will be absolutely upset. But anyways, that's why they really like to get your TFSA money, because it's big business for them and they make a lot of money on it. But again, anything the bank can do, you can do yourself in a self-directed TFSA. I have 4 of them. This just shows that you can have multiple accounts in multiple different places. However, look at the limit. You're not at 18% of your income. You're only allowed a maximum of $6,000 a year spread over all the accounts. Now, if you take money out in, say, 2021, you can add whatever you took out to the $6,000 that you can put in for 2022. Okay? That is a really nice thing. So if you take some money out and you want to put it back, you can, but you cannot put it in the same tax year that you took it out. You have to put it in the next year. So if you took money out in 2021, you can add it to your $6,000 contribution in 2022. Now, the TFSA is the actual ideal account to store and grow money that you're going to use for other investments. If you're going to go buy a new house, if you're going to go buy an investment property, if you're saving for your emergency funds, for God's sakes, do not put it in the RRSP. Please put it into the TFSA. Okay, there are some major advantages for doing that. Now, again, there's no disadvantage. Whatever investments you can have your RRSP in, you can also have those same investments in your TFSA. So if you can figure out how to double your money every 4 years in your RRSP, you can do the exact same thing in your TFSA. The only difference is you won't be able to put as much money in every year as you'd like. We voted out the guy who was going to allow us to put $10,000 a year in there, and we elected the guy who's only going to allow you to put in 6. Yep, Canadians are stupid. I can't help that. Okay, and this is absolutely the account you want to put your down payment for your house in. So basically, the way this works, Ted gets his paycheck, he contributes $150 of after-tax money into his TFSA. Government never looks at you, never talks to you about it ever again. Ted buys $150 worth of stock, sells that stock at $500. Ted buys $500 worth of another stock, and it goes to $5,000, and Ted sells it. When Ted wants to take that money out and use it for his investment property, Ted gets his whole $5,000 out. There is no tax withheld. It is tax-free. You will not get any kind of paperwork that you have to submit with your income. You do not have to declare it. It is your money. So the way tax works, you use your after-tax dollars, you get absolutely no refund. The government gets no taxes out of it at all, and 100% of the money that you make in that account and that you take out is yours. So that is really the huge advantage of the TFSA. So if you take out money out of your TFSA to use as a down payment on your house, you don't have to worry. You don't have to pay it back in 15 years. You don't have to declare it as income. It's your money. You can do with it whatever you want. Now, there's other benefits, hidden benefits to this TFSA account. First of all, you can use it for whatever you like. And as I've said, there's absolutely no tax payable on the money that you make and that comes out of this account. If you're an older person and you have a TFSA and you want to leave it to somebody after your death, that money goes straight to the beneficiary. There is no probate, there is no tax, there is no nothing. If you reach 72, you do not have to start emptying it out. You can leave it there. The biggest one for younger people is that this is not counted against any government benefits. Okay? Let me explain this. Let's say you got laid off. You have $10,000 in your RRSP and you have $10,000 in your TFSA. You collect unemployment insurance. And unemployment insurance is based, your return of how much you can collect is based on how much you make. So based on your income. Let's say you take $5,000 out of your RRSP to help pay the bills. First of all, they're going to withhold 10% of that money, so you're not going to get $5,000, you're only going to get $4,500. And secondly, what you're going to have to do is you're going to have to claim that $4,500 as income, which is not used when they calculated how much you were getting on unemployment insurance. Excuse me. So at the end of the year, because it was based on your unemployment insurance was based without that $4,500, you may wind up having to pay back some of your unemployment insurance benefit. That's because the money that comes out of your RRSP is called income. If you now want to take that money out of your TFSA, first of all, they're not going to withhold anything. You can pull out the full $5,000. You can probably pull it out the next day or within a day or two and have it to do whatever you want. And it does not count against the government benefit. You don't have to declare it, so there is no way you will have to pay more money or pay back your unemployment claim. And I can't tell you how easy it is to access. I have my own TFSA account. It's an online trading account. I can pull money out of that online, and it's out of one account and into the other account in 40 seconds. So the TFSA is really the account you want to use for growing your money, and quite frankly, you can also use it for your retirement. There's no difference between the two accounts if you want to use it for retirement except that if you get $1 million in your RRSP account, you're going to pay tax on every dollar you take out of it. So you're never going to get your full $1 million back. If you have $1 million in your TFSA, you can pull out a full $1 million. You don't have to pay any tax on it. Just remember, if a government ever comes along and wants to change that, that's a government we should never elect. So there you go. That's a quick rundown. Obviously, you realize that I really like the TFSA a heck of a lot more than I like the RRSP. If you're any kind of a person, what I would do is I would always max out my TFSA first, and whatever, if I have more money to put away, I will put that into my RRSP. I'll use my TFSA to buy assets, because if I'm retired and all I have is my RRSP, I have one stream of income. If through the years I use my TFSA as down payments on rental properties that are making me $500, $600, $1,000 a month, and I have 15 or 20 of those by the time I want to retire, I probably will never have to touch my RRSP until I'm 71, and they force me to take the money out as a RIF. So there is an alternative to just putting money into your RRSP for your retirement. Put it into your TFSA, invest it wisely, and generate multiple streams of income for your retirement rather than just your RRSP. There you go. If you have any questions or want to talk about this at any length, my email address is diywealth@gmail.com, and I'm more than happy to talk to you about it. Okay? Thank you very much. Bye-bye.